Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Math with Dr. War. We're here with another non-calculator concept on the GED examination in which you have to determine when a numerical expression is undefined. Now, in mathematics, when we say undefined, it means that your denominator cannot be zero. So anytime you have an expression with the denominator 0, such as let's say 6 over 0, this is what we considered undefined, and by undefined we mean it does not have no solution whatsoever. On the GED examination, you have to be able to identify undefined numerical expressions that have no solution. Now, I did a video of this for the task examination, but on the task, they only focused on when the denominator is 0. But the GED added another component where they're looking at square roots of negative numbers. So if you have the square root of a negative number, let's say negative 9, this will be considered undefined. So anytime on the GED exam and they give you a list of 4 numerical expressions and ask you which one is undefined, if you see the square root of a negative number, that is undefined. And if you see a fraction with a 0 in the denominator, that is also undefined. Now, it's not going to be that simple on the GED exam. You may have to do some work to figure out what number, because they're going to mix variables with numbers for you to figure out which expression is undefined and also what value for the variable makes it undefined. I hope that all makes sense. So I have 2 examples here before we jump into some sample questions. And the first one here, let's call this A, says which value of x makes the expression x plus 4 divided by x minus 3 undefined. Now, the first thing you have to remember, for anything to be undefined, it must be a fraction, and the denominator must not be 0. So with that, you're going to focus only on the denominator. Forget about the numerator. Only focus on the denominator because that should not be 0. So my denominator here is x minus 3. And I'm going to make that equals to 0 because I want to figure out what is the value for x that will make this 0. So this is a one-step linear equation that we're going to solve. If I'm solving for x, I need to get rid of the negative 3. I'm going to do the opposite, where I'm going to add 3 to both sides. That's eliminated, and I get x equals to 0 plus 3 is 3. So x can never be 3, okay? If x equals 3, it's going to be undefined. And we can check this out by substituting. So if we replace the x by 3 minus 3, you get 0. Now, there are some people that can look at this and actually figure out the answer without even solving. So what I do is, if I look at my denominator, I see that's x minus 3. I look, so basically this minus 3, this minus is going with the 3, so make that minus 3, which means to make this 0, it has to be the opposite of this. So the opposite of minus 3 is positive 3. So if you have a positive 3 and you put it with a negative 3, they're going to cancel each other out and you're going to get 0. And I didn't have to do the math. Always take the sign with your integer and then you want the opposite, and that will be your x value. Let's try this again. So we have B here. It says the expression x minus 3 divided by x plus 2 is undefined when the value of x is. So I'm going to do the first method, solving. So I'm going to go x plus 2 equals 0, because remember, you focus only on the denominator. Solving for x, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. I get x equals 0 minus 2 is negative 2. And that's the beauty when you have 0. When you have 0, your answer is just your integer. So x equals negative 2. Now, if you're that person that doesn't want to solve, you're like, okay, I have x plus 2 here. This is a positive 2. So what will be the opposite of positive 2? Negative 2. So that would be your x. So if you want to solve, I know there's some people that like to solve, you can go ahead. If you don't want to solve, you can eyeball it, you can look, and you can find your answer. These problems are not that difficult, and they're not going to give you like weirdy denominators. So let's look at question number 1. Question 1 says, for which value of x is the expression x minus 2 undefined? So here I have x minus 2. You can let it equals to 0. You can solve. If you're solving for x, you have to get rid of minus 2. So you do the opposite. You add 2 to both sides. And that's canceled. You get x equals to positive 2. So your answer is B. Again, if you don't want to solve, focus on your denominator, x minus 2. Now here, notice I took the sign that's minus 2. Who is the opposite? Positive 2. And that's what your x cannot be. Because if your x here is a positive 2 minus 2 gives you 0. And once you have a 0 in that denominator, your expression is undefined. Let's look at question 2. With question 2, I'm not going to solve. I'm going to do the eyeballing. Now it says the expression 5 over x minus 2 and then x plus 3 is meaningless. And when they say meaningless, they just mean undefined when x is equal to. Now, this one is special. Notice how many parentheses do you have? You have 2. You have x minus 2 and you have x plus 3. Now, because you have 2 parentheses, you're going to have 2 values as your answer, which means we can eliminate B and we can eliminate D because they only have 1 value. So over here, I said I'm not going to solve, so I'm going to eyeball. So notice here, I'm taking the sign, so that's a negative 2. The opposite is going to be a positive 2. Go over here. That's a positive 3. The opposite is going to be negative 3. So I'm looking for positive 2. Oops, that's a 3. And a negative 3. So your answer is A. Now, when your leading coefficient is just a 1x, this is very simple. Very simple when it's just 1x. This was 1x minus 2. This was 1x minus 2 and 1x plus 3. So I like question 3 because it's worded a little bit different. It says, which expression is undefined if x equals to 2? Now, in order for something to be undefined, it must be a fraction. So looking at my answers here, I notice D is not a fraction, so I can eliminate that. Also, if it's a fraction, the denominator must equals 0. Now, I notice that this equals 2. This is a 2 down here, so I can get rid of that, which means your answer is either A or C. Now, we can do a little bit of substitution. It says if x is 2, if you look at C, 2 over, and if you replace that x by 2, you get 2 over 2, and if you divide that, you get 1. So you can actually get a solution. So your answer is not C, your answer is A. So again, if we didn't want to solve, here's our denominator. Right here, that's a negative 2, and the opposite of that would be positive 2. So if you put 2 minus 2, your denominator becomes 0, and your expression is undefined. Let's look at number 4. It says, for which value of x will the fraction 5 over 2x minus 8 be undefined? So notice this is not a 1x, this is a 2x minus 8. So with this being 2x minus 8, you're going to have to solve. And this is a two-step linear equation. So solving for x, I'm going to add 8 to both sides. This is eliminated. 2x equals 8. Solving for x, divide both sides by 2. That cancels. You have x equals to 4. So your answer is 4. Now, if you didn't want to solve, let's go over here again. You have 2x minus 8. You can do substitution. There's nothing wrong with that, but remember, you can't use a calculator. So the first thing I'll focus on is, you notice over here, this is a negative, which means your value for x must be a positive. So A would be not your answer. So if we tried B, this would be 2 times 2, which is 4, minus 8. Now I know that will not give me 0. So B is out. Let's try C. This will be 2 times 8 is 16, and I know 16 minus 8 is not 0. So your answer is not C. And then here you have 2 times 4, which is 8, minus 8. Yep, that does give you 0. So your answer for number 4 is D. Because this was not a 1x, you can solve, or you can use this substitution method that I did. Notice the first thing I did is I looked and saw that at the end was a negative 8. So my answer would have to be a positive. That got rid of A, and then I just used substitution. And last but not least, it says which expression is undefined in the set of real numbers. So remember, in order to be undefined, you must be a fraction, and in the denominator must be a 0. So let's put some letters here. A, B, C, D. Now, I notice D is not a fraction. Not a fraction. Which means this is not undefined. C also is not a fraction. So, not undefined. B is a fraction, but the denominator is negative 4. It is not 0. So that is not undefined. However, A is a negative square root. And remember at the beginning of the lesson, I said that the GED folks threw in this extra caveat where they say, oh, if you have a negative square root, the square root of a negative integer, this is considered undefined. I hope you found this lesson helpful. If you did, please hit that like button. Also, if you like the content, please share with your friends, comment down below, and as always, subscribe if you like what you see here. If you have a test coming up, good luck. If you do not, please continue to support the channel and have a great day.